Welcome everyone to the Arkitechs Digitalks. I'm Carolina, your host, and we are here today with Steve from the Hour of Champions. Steve, please go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience and tell us about your experience, all the things you've done in your lifetime, which I know are many things. Go ahead.
Well, you told me I have like an hour, not 30 days. I'm just kidding. My name is Steve Werner. I am here in Glenview, Illinois, which is a suburb about 20 miles north of Chicago. And I'm so honored that Carolina asked me to join her for this, for her podcast. I'm a former bond trader on the floor of the Chicago Board of Trade. I don't even know if the whole audience would know what that means. It was kind of
Well, tell us a little bit about it.
yeah, well, if you could see the mural on my wall behind me, perhaps you might be able to see a bunch of people in an area. And before trading went exclusively to computers and high-speed training, there was actually a time in history where trades were done on what was called the trading floor with hundreds and hundreds of people interacting face-to-face on a daily basis. And I was very lucky right out of college. I went to school in Arizona. Grew up in Chicago, but found myself at this crazy place called the Chicago Board of Trade in this environment, this crazy environment of 600 people packed into an area the size of a tennis court, jumping up and down, screaming and yelling, making transactions. And at that time, what was the 30-year Treasury bond pit on the floor of the Chicago Board of Trade. I always like to say, you don't get to see the script of your life. I would have never imagined that subsequent to that, I would have found myself in the world of specialty finance, and then in a niche security business after that, certainly with battles and struggles along the way in life and in business, but lucky to have a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful children, and now 3 beautiful grandchildren, some 40 some odd years later. And I find myself in the world of coaching and speaking and trying to help people navigate the journey of life and business along the way. And somehow through our orbit, we met up here today. So I'm so excited to be part of this podcast.
Tell us about the Hour of Champions. What is it? How did you come up with the name?
Along my journey, there were some bumps in the road. Subsequent to my trading career, I wound up in a family-owned business that needed to be reorganized, and myself and my partners at the time built it into something very, very special after a very, very intense reorganization. And it was actually poised for sale in the year 2008. We were being looked at by private equity groups and other forms of acquisition. And then the credit crisis hit in the US and around the world. And as fast as the company was built, that's how fast it was destroyed, unfortunately. And I was a young guy with a wife and 3 kids, a few just starting college, and got very overwhelmed at the time and kind of beaten down by being a casualty of that credit crisis. A few years later, I found myself living day to day on prescription meds to just make it through life, actually, in total transparency. And I was called out by a young doctor, a friend's son, one morning. We were having breakfast, and he noticed something about me that didn't look ordinary to him, and he had known me for his whole life. And I wound up telling him that I was on all these medications, and he basically said to me that I was going to die, that
Jesus.
there was no possible way I could live on, and whoever
That's crazy.
put me on all these meds, should be investigated. I always take responsibility for my personal journey. I was seeing a doctor at the time. I was taking the medications as prescribed, never abused them in any way, shape, or form. But I had no idea that you could actually get addicted to medication that a doctor gave you. And I found out the hard way because I decided to push in all my chips and see if there was a life on the other side, free of the medications. And I spent a very, very painful 11 months getting off all of them one at a time through the guidance of this young doctor. But a lot of it took working out super intensely in the middle of the night. As a matter of fact, the second night, I started going through massive withdrawals and reached out to my friend at 2:00 in the morning. And he not so kindly texted me back, "Go F yourself," and I'll be kind and won't use vulgarity. And he told me to get out on the street and run 25 wind sprints. And it was February 4th. It was 5 below zero. And I went and did it. And I'll tell you the truth, that was the first night of 10 months of living hell. But I battled my way through it. Going to the start at 3:00 in the morning. And before I would leave, I would search YouTube for something that interested me on spirituality, on mindset training. I would program it into my
Mm-hmm.
phone, and I would listen to it as I worked out all by myself. And then one morning I was leaving the health club at 4 in the morning, and I ran into a man that was just getting there, and he asked me what I was doing. He asked me if I was like a police officer, a fireman. And I said, no, I'm just saving my life. And with a smile, and he asked what that meant. And I described it to him. And I mean, I could hear it as clear as a bell. It was 10 years ago. He said to me, it's like you're training for a championship fight and you do this all in 1 hour. And I went out to my car. It was pitch black. I got in my car and I wrote on the back of a business card, the hour of champions. And I said, if I'm lucky enough to make it to the other side of this, because I was still uncertain, I'm going to share it with the world. And I'm going to prove to the world that you can live free of all these medications, because I still have the same stress, sadness, anxiety, all the human emotions, except for
Mm-hmm.
I use the phrase now, I traded a pill for a prayer. And I just found a different way to navigate the noise of life's journey. And I called it the Hour of Champions. I reached out to a college buddy and I said, I'm about to start a Facebook community. Will you be my first member? And I told him what was going on in my life. And he said, pretty courageous battle. I'd love to be your first member. And that was 2018. And it just kind of snowballed into about 4,000 people that started following me. And I started sharing my message and getting it out to the
So
world.
right
And
now, 4,000.
yeah,
4,000
somewhere
people.
between 3 and 4,000. I've kind of cleaned it up a little bit. For Facebook doesn't like when you have groups where people don't participate. They would rather have a
Right.
smaller group with a lot of interaction than a bigger group with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of members that don't interact. So spent some time a few months ago just kind of deleting people that weren't active. There was no person. I had nothing personal against them. I was just a kind of a business decision. So it's a little over 3,000 right now.
Okay. Okay. All
So
right.
yeah,
So that was the name and the story behind the name.
that's where the name originated. Yes.
You've had experience with, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, clearly.
Yes.
You've had a few different business experience, right?
Yep.
Businesses that have come and gone, let's
Yes.
call it.
That is true.
And because of the businesses that have come and gone, you decided to do something pretty cool, which was, where most people transition. You said it earlier, you wanted to teach and spread that message to other people, right? And so you decided to write a book. But it's not your usual business book. So my first question to you is, what inspired you to write the book? But more importantly, because when I started reading the book, right, it's not normal, because you decided to go in a time travel experience, which, where did that come from? Right.
Yes. Yep. Well, a few questions there you asked, like what inspired me to write the book. First of all, I wanted to give a shout out to the people that helped shape me along the way, who were my father, my grandfather, my great uncles. And I decided to do it in the form of a story and take a character and throw them back in time and weave the principles that they taught me into the story. And they're the names of the chapters. And
Mm-hmm.
ironically, they turn out to be the formula for success that I've used in business and life along the way, and that I now coach people on. Because I didn't want it to be an ordinary boring business book. Not that all business books are boring, but there seems to be a lot of the same redundancy.
It is definitely not.
Thank you. I
It is
appreciate
not.
that. No, and really what happened was I was having breakfast with a young man who I was coaching at the time, and he asked me if I had thought about writing a book. And I said, it's on my bucket list, but I wouldn't even know how to do it. And he wound up introducing me to a fellow that had written about 10 or 12 different business books. And I hired him. And the way it worked was he said to me, you're going to tell me your story and we're going to bring it to life together. And it's going to be short, but it's going to be impactful. And we want to get these principles across to people. And what we really need to do is we need to get the opening scene very much like a movie. Like if we captivate the audience with the opening scene, they're going to read the whole book. But if we don't, they're going to put it up on their bookshelf like people do with many books because they're not
Yeah.
captivated. The fellow said, but the problem is I'm moving to the Ukraine. True story. So we're going to have to
Interesting.
do it in the middle of the night on Google Docs where we're just typing back and forth to each other. And what he did
Nice.
was he started asking me a series of questions. We took the story back to 1940 Chicago. He asked me what
Mm-hmm.
the city looked like. He had me go down to the river bottom in the downtown area and sit with my eyes closed and imagine what the city looked like in 1945 and what it smelled like and what it sounded like. And I did all this descriptive stuff, and he just brought it to life scene by scene. And we worked on it together for about 6 months to really just get 85 pages out. But like, I hope it was like 85 very captivating pages with principles in there that people could read and go, oh my God, I could feel this in my own life. I could tell this story. I could retell this story in my life and then use it as
Mm-hmm.
like a navigational system for life and business going forward.
Yeah. So your book is unique in two ways for me, right? And I had the time to go through it last week in preparation for this. And the time travel story is phenomenal because I didn't expect a business book to have that thrown in there,
Thank you so
right?
much. Yes.
And the other part where it's also unique because it combines the two is that you are going through the story, but you also give people the space to write. So it also becomes a workbook of your own experience. So it's you're listening to the story, and then at the same time you're working on your own story, which then it's like, okay, so you take your principles, like you said, the chapters are the principles, and as you're going through the story, you're writing your own story, and it's making you kind of reflect on your own while you're still going through the story of the book. And we're not going to give the whole book away in here, but I do want you to talk a little bit about, you know, I mean, we can talk about Jack and the characters of the book, just to give some context, but then touch a little bit on these principles so that people can then kind of, maybe use them in their own while they're listening to us and get more familiar with what you're trying to teach, what you've learned, and how this applies to business, right?
Yeah, well, I will tell you that the first launch of the book was a book without the questions. And the fellow that helped me with the book, he had this big vision of there being a sequel to the Titan and a whole like road show of Steve getting on stage and traveling around the country and around the world. And then he died in 2014. He got
The
sick.
guy that helped you
He did.
write the book died.
Yes.
The guy that went to Ukraine.
Yes. Yep.
Oh my God, that's a twist.
Yeah, he got a terminal illness and died very quickly. And I'm a very
So
spiritual
sorry.
person. That was one of my first encounters with spirituality. And what I came to understand was that the universe, or however you want to say it, put him into my
Yeah.
life and said, "This is
Yeah.
what we're going to do. And guess what, buddy? You've got to carry it on now." I had a choice. I could either carry it on or not carry it on. And like many things in my journey, it would have haunted me to not know if I could have carried it on. So I decided to. And I decided to, in his honor, launch the workbook part of it and
Okay.
republish the book. The first version was just the story. The second version was the story with the questions that you spoke of, because he really helped me formulate that. And I'm not going to speak to all of the principles, but I will tell you the most important two that came out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Number one was the fact that you have to know your story. And in my coaching program and
Yes.
my speaking program, I'm very adamant about people understanding how important it is to know your story. You hear a lot, people say a lot, you can't change your story. Well, that's true. You can't change it, but you can change the way you tell it. And that can change your life forever. And your story is such a useful tool to navigate your life that we wanted to highlight that immediately in the book. And then there was other principles along the way, just how to manage and navigate the ups and downs of life. But the last one, and the one that got the greatest amount of reviews on Amazon and maybe captured your attention, was the whole give the gift part. And that's how to
Yes.
deliver a message to somebody in your world that's you are allowing to cause you stress or anxiety. That was actually taught to me by a Catholic priest in 2009, who happened to be
Mm-hmm.
best friends with my father's rabbi. They actually did a lot of interfaith marriages together. and I became friends with this priest, and he helped me a lot in a very troubled time in my life. And then he too wound up with a terminal illness, and I found myself taking care of him until he died. But he taught me this concept of delivering a message, a very, very, very tough message, but delivering it with love instead of confrontation. And when you do that, the person that you deliver it to is almost defenseless because they're ready. They got their hands up. They're ready for confrontation. And you're just walking up with a smile, with a very open heart, saying, here's an issue that's going on. I really don't want it anymore. You can have it, with a smile on your face. And I get people all the time, whether they're coaching clients, people that have heard me speak, or people that I've just shared the story with, call me up and tell me, I gave the gift to my business partner today. I gave the gift to my brother today. I gave the gift to, a colleague, whatever it was. So those two things in particular were really powerful messages that were incorporated in a very short little story, but I think it came with a good punch.
Yeah. God, yeah, that was at the end of the book when we get to that principle. It is impactful, right? Because often enough we let people, let's call it, bring their negativity into our own lives, and that drags us down and makes our life difficult. And especially with family and close friends, it's hard to turn them away.
The great irony is a lot of the times the people on the other side don't even know that you're suffering in agony. They're going to bed at night,
True.
sleeping like a baby. One of the great examples for me was a business partner who was a close friend who I was just letting kind of run my journey. And I decided to give him the gift. And I walked into his office one morning and I looked at my watch and I said, do me a favor, in 30 seconds, tell me everything about me you hate. And he looked at me and he said, what? I couldn't do that. You're my friend. You're my business partner. I'd insult you. I couldn't imagine myself doing that. And I looked at my watch and I said, well, in 20 seconds, I'm going to go first. So you tell me, you want to go or you want me to go? And we shut the door and we both told each other everything about each other that we didn't like. And it was so cathartic, if that's the right word, and cleansing. And we just hugged and we both had tears coming down our face. And we said, wow, do we wish we would have done that like 18 months ago? It would have solved a lot of
Oh,
stress
wow.
and anxiety, but it works. It
A
really
lot of
did.
pains, right?
Yep.
Huh. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that with anybody.
Mm,
I have told them hard truths,
yep.
but not like that.
There's a kind of a way to sit down with a big smile on your face and just do it with love and kindness. And again, it's indefensible because you're delivering it honestly with like a lot of like energy and love. And it's just a kinder way to deliver, and the impact is immeasurable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, sometimes you have to make those choices, right?
Well,
Either
you got to
let
go to
them
bed every
drag
night in
you,
agony.
or
Yep.
true.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so when one thing you said to me on our last conversation was, go and look on Amazon, right? I
Yes.
have the book,
I
and
said,
then
I
you
said, please
asked
look
me,
on Amazon. I didn't say go and look. I said, please look.
please, okay,
Yeah.
so please go look in
Yeah.
Amazon, and you actually said look for the reviews,
Yes.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know the why, but I want you to tell us why you asked me to do that.
Because I wanted to see a pattern. I'm a former trader, so I look for patterns in everything. And when I saw the pattern of
Mm-hmm.
what most affected people, what they told me, right, through their reviews, what they got out of the book, it was almost universal that the know your story and give your gift out of this 5 or 6
Yeah.
principles in the book were the ones that really impacted people. And that gave me the ability to carry those forward and really, really examine those 2 principles and make them bigger and better over the last 10 years, understand the importance and the impact. So I wanted kind of before this conversation to have you see that and kind of interpret it in the way like, boy, maybe even before I read the book, I know what's coming, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. In all fairness, I did not read the reviews until I was done
Okay,
the book.
fair enough.
Right. I wanted to keep the element of surprise in there.
Very smart on your part.
But these podcasts, these, what we do here is for businesses, and you clearly your book it's about this. And two things in the book that I don't think we've talked about it. These two characters in the book had been struggling with some decision making, right? Which
Yep.
I think for anybody in business, I think we've all had those struggles. So I want you to tell us a little bit about what struggles did you experience that triggered that conversation, and what have you learned from those struggles that could help entrepreneurs and business people to improve their decision making when it comes to tough decisions, when they have to make decisions about their business and what to do next. And it's difficult being a business owner. It's not as easy as it seems.
Yeah, I don't know when it seems easy, but I know that phrase. I'm very familiar with that phrase. To answer your question again, if you look at the mural on the wall behind me and you see the
The
scene of the
trading
commodity
floor.
trading, in that environment, you had less than a second to make a decision. There was no, I'll think about it, I'll
Yeah.
get back to you tomorrow, or I'll get back to you in an hour, or I'll get back to you in 5 minutes. You had less than a split second to make a decision when there was a trade in front of you. And it kind of programmed me to be able to understand that all decisions aren't going to work out perfectly. And the question is, what do you do when you make a decision that doesn't work out perfectly? In that environment, if you really want to survive and thrive, you learn how to be a programmed loser, believe it or not, and take a loss very quickly to get in and make more trades
Right.
and make a great percentage of your trades winners, a very small percent losers, and you do great. In business going forward, sometimes having too much time to make a decision allows you to be paralyzed in a decision. So my
Hmm.
advice is, and it's nothing like earth shattering, it's to go with your instinct. And if you make a decision and it doesn't work out, pivot quickly and figure out how to minimize your loss always, whether it's a decision in business, a decision in life, a decision in a relationship. And I think one thing I've done is I've gone back and I've examined my journey. I know my story, just like I mentioned in the
Hmm.
book, and I can go back and I can see many, many times along my life journey where I made a decision that didn't work out, and then how I worked my way out of that decision by limiting a loss or pivoting.
Hmm.
Sorry, my dog is barking in the background here. That means my wife probably just walked out. I don't know if you can hear him. Um, quiet down in a
Oh,
second. Uh,
poor baby.
um, the
Is
really,
really
I think this.
upset.
Pardon me. The solution is,
The dog is really upset.
yeah, he's agreeing with me on the solution. I'm going to open my door here for 1 second. Excuse me. He just wants to come in. But I think that because you asked, one of the great solutions is to really understand your story and go back and find the evidence. When you say to yourself, oh my God, I can't get through this situation. If you go back and you look at your life journey, there are many times when you've fallen or got
Oh,
yourself
many.
in a situation where you didn't think you'd ever get out of it, and somehow we're here today. So I'm a big fan of looking for evidence, and as a matter of fact, ironically, I have it written on my board right there. So I would suggest to the audience to really go back and examine your life story and all the ups and downs, and repeat the things that work all the time, and be very cognizant of the things that don't work and try to avoid them. And it really makes things a lot easier. It makes the ride a lot smoother.
Okay, so I'm gonna pivot here. I'm in the marketing business, and I know. Well, I was going through the book in one of the chapters. I can't remember which one, but Jack discusses the future with Ted, the two characters, the main characters of this story, and he mentions that marketing will become the single most critical factor in the success or failure of a business. And the question is, how has this prediction played out, and what marketing principles from the book remain relevant today, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, it's the ability to network and market yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, think about how marketing has changed, right? From being able to hand out a business card years ago to maybe a billboard, to fast forward, 50 years since or 70 years since the timeline of the book was written. Marketing is all over the place, but I do think it is the single most critical factor. And I think the ability to market yourself, your personality, your desires, your conviction, still remains stronger than any message that can float around on a TV ad or a billboard or social media. And I think Ted was right, and Jack knew that when he came back to you don't know the sequel to but at that time he's stuck in 1947 because he got thrown back in time. But if he could see, what the world looked like in 2020 before he got thrown back, he would say, God, was he right? You know, it was all
It's
about
true.
the marketing.
It's all about the marketing. This one, it's speaking of marketing. I mean, marketing, I think marketing and sales, because they go hand in hand, right? And I know from our previous conversations that you have done a lot of sales in your businesses. Tell us how you see marketing and sales working together. In your experience, where have you seen success and when have you seen it fail?
Well, I'm a believer in the old fashioned way. So when we grew our lending business, our marketing strategy was to come in every single morning, meet at a desk at 6 o'clock in the morning, go into the local newspapers and circle the names of people that were buying and selling real estate in the city of Chicago, cold call them, ask them if we could meet them for a cup of coffee, and then let them know what we did better than the competition. And we took the business from 400,000 in lending volume, $400,000 in lending volume in 2001 to 100 million in 2005. So the most primitive of methods turned out to be the greatest. And it's all in building high trust, I think, like getting in front of people face to face. And when you meet them and you get to do business with them, knowing the color of their eyes, the names of their children, the names of their grandchildren, reminding them that you're cognizant of how the last transaction worked out, really understanding their needs. And I think that supersedes any um, like high technical, fast moving version of what people perceive marketing to be. I think that every time I try to take a shortcut and think that, I'm just going to post something on Facebook or post something on LinkedIn, you become good at posting, but you don't become
Mm-hmm.
good at creating relationships. There's something
It's true.
about that first touch and that personal approach that will always outpace the faster way. I believe I have never been successful in I'm like, oh my God, I did a LinkedIn post. How come 100 people didn't call me? Because they don't know anything about me and I don't know anything about them. And there's a billion other LinkedIn posts out there. I didn't take the time to get into
Oh, yeah.
to really understand their needs and their pain, and have that, let them know that I actually care, that I'm actually somebody who cares about somebody's success, not just somebody that wants to sell them a good or a service. And I think when you do that, and I had this concept, I'm so glad you asked this of me, because uh, about 15 years ago, when we were starting our security business, I was having lunch with a guy that I had met at a fundraiser. He didn't know me. I think we met and there was something there that was like heartfelt, and figured we should probably have lunch and see if there was something there going forward. And I was kind of
Mm-hmm.
fiddling around with my phone, and he said to me, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, I've got 3,500 contacts in my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I can't monetize them." And he said to me, "Didn't you know?" And I said, "Didn't I know what?" And he said, "You can't monetize a contact." And I sat back. I go, "What do you mean?" He said, "You can only monetize a relationship." And he proceeded to tell me the difference between a contact and a relationship. He said, "You
I
see,
love
my
that.
phone," pardon me?
I love that.
He said, "You see, my phone is filled with relationships." And I said, "Tell me
Uh-huh.
more." And he said, Sure. I go through my phone all the time, and people that I know that are relationships, I sprinkle them with a little sunshine and water all the time, meaning keeping them growing. He said, "See, while
Right.
I'm having lunch here with you, those relationships are bragging about me all over the world right now. So I never make outgoing calls. All I do is answer incoming calls." He said, "And I suggest when you go home tonight, you look at all those contacts and decide which
Mm-hmm.
one is a relationship and make sure that you let them know what you're up to these days and let them know that you're there for them as well. And you kind of work together. And it changed my whole world. I came into my business months later, and my partners were actually upset with me that I wasn't making enough outgoing calls as a salesperson. And I said, I don't have the
Mm-hmm.
time. I'm too busy answering incoming calls. I don't even have the time to make an outgoing call. And it was fascinating. And I teach that also in my training, how to turn your phone into an ATM machine, I call it.
So, okay, so here is a twist to that idea, because I mean there's a ton of business people out there. I mean, brand new businesses, right? Where I mean, not everybody has that huge network, right? So, how do you grow your network if you're not at the point where you're constantly getting that incoming call, right?
Yep. You know what you do? You operate through life understanding that one phone call or one handshake can change your life forever. And you make sure to be kind to everybody that you meet and learn how to stir up conversations. There is never a time where if I'm on the phone with somebody, I'm not asking where they're from, where they grew up, where they went to school, what sports team they like. I get to know everything about them, let them know what I'm doing, and I ask them if they might know two or three other people that might be interested in meeting me. I'd love the introduction. And by the way, I'm open also. And if I can help you,
Mm-hmm.
let me know what kind of introduction you'd like. And it's reciprocal. And then it kind of grows like wildfire. You know, it starts with one person. The power of incremental growth is crazy. One turns into two, two turns into four, four turns into eight, you know, the program. And if you use the approach one at a time, it will take you forever. But if you think every person that you meet knows three people who knows three people who knows three people, you could just watch it. It's like, you know, it just explodes. And it's kind of fun, actually.
How do you get them to, in your experience, how do you get them to introduce you to the three people?
I just ask them if they know three people or if they can think of three people that might need my services or might like to meet me. And if they say, you know, not right at this moment, at least I know I planted the seed in their brain. And maybe next Saturday night when they're sitting at dinner with three couples and somebody says, you know what? I've been struggling in business. I find myself in this kind of, they call it Groundhog Day, where the same thing repeats itself. I've been thinking about what to do. They might say, you know what? I met a guy 2 weeks ago. You need to meet him. I think he might be able to help you. And that's kind of the way things work. You plant seeds in people,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so if let's go back to the book for a few minutes because I have one more question
Please.
that I in one of the chapters you, well, not you, but your characters talk about, or the story talks about developing systems to scale their business. And how do you see the relationship between effective marketing and operational systems in today's business environment? Tie it with the book,
Well, I
right?
think that, you know, we all get guilty of what's called shiny object syndrome, where everything looks
Mm-hmm.
great instead of just focusing on two or three things that are working and replicate. I think my smartest friend in business who built an enormous marketing company pounded this into my brain for a long time. And maybe I thought through it while I was writing the book that you can't chase everything. But if you can devise a system that works and replicate it, you've got a business right there without like letting every single new nuance or new fancy thing come into your world. You grow slowly. Um,
It's hard nowadays, though.
it is, but I guarantee that if you look back at your story, like I say,
Mm-hmm.
and you look back at all the times where you've kind of fallen off the tracks, it's probably because, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, because this is what entrepreneurs do. They lose focus. They race so quickly instead of
Mm-hmm.
building something that works and saying, you know what, I'm only going to do this for 6 months right now, and I'm going to prove it. And then if it works, I'm going to double it and then double it and then double it instead of trying something new all the time. It really twists your brain. And
I'm guilty of it.
no, we all are, but it's what makes life and entrepreneurship challenging. And one of the things that I learned from that environment behind me was how to create a discipline. I walked out my door every morning, and in my closet I had a card and it said, make good trades, get out of losers quickly, stay disciplined, and have fun. And I looked at it every morning before I left my house and I said, that's all I have to do. That's all I have to do. I don't have to listen to the noise of what everybody else is doing and get opinionated and start thinking that I was bigger or smarter than the market. I'm not. I just have to come up with my own little formula of discipline and repeat it day after day after day
Mm-hmm.
after day. And it works. You can go to the bank on it.
That's awesome.
Keep it
Okay.
simple, you know?
So, yeah, it's true, right? Sometimes we complicate our own lives for no reason,
We're great at it.
just
We
to
love
try
to do
something
it.
new.
Yeah, we love to.
Yeah, we
I
love
was
it.
guilty of it. And then I look back at my journey and I go, what caused the screw up? I took my eye off the ball. I got out of my discipline. I got a reminder, a tap
Mm-hmm.
on the shoulder. Stop it. The tap is you're in pain. Things aren't working. Why are you in pain? Because you stopped doing what works. You know, it's,
Yeah. So, who are you, Jack or Ted?
I'll let you
Or
guess.
both? Come
Yeah,
on, give
I'm
us a little
clearly
bit.
Jack. I'm the curious one. You know, I got
Yeah.
thrown back in time. You know, Ted could be one of any number of characters. My dad is the boy in the pawn shop. My great uncle who I live with is Ben from the pawn shop. Flo
Mm-hmm.
is the lady in the donut shop. Is my great aunt, and the other characters are
How
family
cool
members. Yeah,
are
along the
they?
way. Yeah, that I
But
just
you're
wanted to.
Jack.
Pardon me. I'm Jack.
But you're
Yes.
Jack.
Yep. Mr. Curiosity.
Who's
Always.
Ted?
Yep.
Ted, your dad?
Ted
No,
is
you
no.
said your
Ted
dad
is
is
just
the
Ted is an abstract
this.
figure. He's the mentor, just that appears in
He's the
everybody's life.
mentor.
And you just have to, when you read the book, you have to figure out who your Ted is, you know, or you've got to go find your Ted, because everybody needs a mentor, and they're out there. They want to help people. They really do. You know, successful people want to help people.
Yeah, it's true actually. I think successful. It's funny how that works in my experience.
Mine too.
But successful people have been more helpful to me to help me rise up. And it's true. It's I don't remember where it came from, but when you look up, you look at the stars, right? When you're looking down, the view not always as great. But if you look up, you're always looking at the stars at least. So you look up to the people. I think in business, my TEDs have been people that I want to be like. I'm not necessarily there yet, but I want to be like them in my future self, right?
I think so. I think
So
you're destined to be the female version of Ted at some point where people will come to you. Yeah, I think that's the greatest gift,
maybe.
actually. In my world, it
I
is.
think that's the idea. That's the goal,
Yeah,
right?
it is. Yeah.
To serve enough people that they can say I was at one point in their life their TEDs.
You know, there was a great college basketball coach here in the U.S. for years named John Wooden, and if you've never read any of his stuff, you should. But he devised what was called the pyramid of success that worked in
Mm-hmm.
his basketball program, and one of the blocks of the pyramid was do something kind every day for someone you'll never know. And
Yeah,
I live that principle.
very good.
I try to do that every day.
All right, Steve. Tell us how anybody listening to us right now can find you, and tell us the things you do or that you can do for them in your business, in your life.
Well, thank you for letting me offer that. I can be found on my website at hourofchampions.com, of course, or my Facebook community, Hour of Champions. It's a private Facebook community, but I encourage people to reach out and join, and I'll admit you. You can email me at steve at hourofchampions.com. And if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, or somebody that wants somebody kind of fun and different to come and speak at your event or to your business, that's what I love to do. It's my passion to come in and really tell stories like the Titan and deliver messages through stories, because I think it resonates with people and they can find themselves within the story, and it helps them remember and use that story on their own personal journey. I also have a podcast called Hour of Champions, where almost every title to every encounter I've had in business or in life is been made into a very short podcast. So I think when you listen to it, you find yourself in that exact journey and you're able to replay it back in your life. And that's my intention. I don't want to be like this educator. I want to be a storyteller that whose stories resonate with people whose journeys are parallel to mine and yours. The dream
Great.
chasers and the shiny object chasers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The we've owned and done multiple things through our life. We've never dedicated, 50 years to one job, but always seeking for that thing that's gonna level us up. Even if it takes a little while.
Or that thing that we just could discover and then share it with the world, and make somebody's journey a
True.
little quicker and a
Yeah.
little easier. Like I know that if people come to me, they're going to shorten that curve. I call it turning decades into days, right? If you allow me to come into your world, I will turn
Yeah.
what's going to take a decade for you to learn into days. And that will get you along the path much quicker.
Very good. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for coming on the show and for giving us all that great insight and talking about your book. I hope this is not the last time we see you, and that maybe we can revisit on a point two recording where you're at in life. What new things have, and maybe another book. Who knows?
Or maybe we could flip the script and I could interview you and you can tell us what's going on in your life.
We can do that too.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you. And thank you for
Thank you
reading my
for.
book. I appreciate that.
No, I enjoyed the experience actually. It was fun.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Take care. We'll talk soon.
Okay.